Anishinaabe Nation Gizo Mizinigan, Anishinaabe Kirwedan, Miigwechwendam Ian McCollum, B. Kitamagayang Nungum. Hello, hi everybody. Thank you for coming here today for the webinar featuring Ian McCollum. And today's an exciting day for us because we're also featuring the Munsee Delaware dialect of the Lenape people. So we'll be going over words and phrases for planting moon from the annual calendar. Ali Darnay and Digigas, Kitigan Zibi and Donjaba, Anishinaabe Kwe and Dao. I'm Ali Darnay from Garden River First Nation. I'm Ojibwe and a woman. Nigan Zikirang, Anishinaabe manager, Anishinaabe Nation, Donjanaki. I'm the Anishinaabe manager here at the Anishinaabe Nation. In Gichinendam, Jinaki Tawagwa, Ginden Wewindana, Miigwechwendam. I'm really happy, to work for our language and with our language, and very grateful. The Anishinaabe Nation established the Anishinaabe Department last year in January to support language preservation, reclamation, and revitalization. We're really happy to have you joining us today, and I'm going to turn things over to my colleague, Lori, who is the Anakid Anishinaabe coordinator. Naha Lori Gindam.
How Wewena Show Kinawaya Lori McLeod Shabagija Kondishnakas Chiging Dwanjaba Minwa Taganing Nipasing Ndibendagwas Chmigwechki Bajayak. Thank you for everyone for coming, and let's begin. Anchmira. Can we change the slide, Ali?
Becca.
So at each of our meetings at Anishinaabe Nation, we begin with Ngudwe Wangazat Anishinaabe. It kind of sets the tone for who we are and how we're connected as one Anishinaabe family. De Benjaged Gi San Anishinaabe na King, Gibidagun Gadanim and Adowa Dizerwin. Creator placed Anishinaabe on the earth along with the gift of spirituality. Miigwech. Shkude nebe ake noden gibidagostanan we nagadawendamong mampish gogmigong. Here on Mother Earth, there were gifts given to the Anishinaabe to look after: fire, water, earth, and wind. De Benjaged Gimina and Gichatwa Wandagok, Anishinaaben Wadagdonjin, Nindanishwaswe Kinomadwinan. The Creator gave 7 sacred gifts. Gave Anishinaabe 7 sacred gifts to guide them. They are Zagidwin, Debwewin, Monadendamowin, Nabwakawin, Dabadendiswin, Gwekwadzamin, Kwadzawin, Minwa Akadewin. Love, truth, respect, wisdom, humility, honesty, and bravery. De Benjaged Kimin Gona, Dedbinwe, Winagadawendawin. Creator gave us sovereignty to govern ourselves. Kamana Dendana Gabe Joebak, Minwa Nangwa Megwa Ejoebak, Minwa Gayabe Wanijoebak. We respect and honor the past, present, and future. Chimiwech, and that's the preamble to the Anishinaabe Nation. And those beautiful images were created for us by our former head elder, Gordon Wandabenspa. And he created those so that we can, as a reminder of who we are and how we came to be. Miigwech. Next slide, please, Ali. Well, we're very excited at Anishinaabe Nation to say that this coming year will be the very first year we have funding for the Anishinaabe Nation calendar. And so each of these previous calendars have been created through a lot of, volunteerism and a lot of support from other programs who contributed to the calendar. So I just wanted to say that plans are underway for the 2025 calendar. We're currently looking for artwork for our cover. And we're also looking for contributors for our monthly phrases. And for each of these, we're seeking contributors who are from our Anishinaabeg Nation communities. And we are also planning to create a directory of language classes. If you have a web page that promotes Anishinaabemowin, if there are any events that you have coming up in the next year that you would like to share and that are open for others to join, please contact us and we'd like to promote them in next year's calendar, whether it doesn't matter where they are, on reserve, off reserve, we'd like to promote language as much as possible. And so I'll put my email in the chat a little later on. And if you have any questions, you can contact me there. Chmiigwech.
Chmiigwech, Lori. And if you're interested in contributing to our calendar next year, then reach out to us and let us know. We'd be happy to feature, a new set of communities and new language leaders and teachers and speakers. And again, just always happy to share what's happening for our languages across the Anishinaabeg Nation. Now, to introduce you to our facilitator today, Ian McCullum. He's a PhD student at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, University of Toronto, a member of the Munsee Delaware First Nation. Ian works with his community promoting culture and history and is an educator working with the Munsee language. He's currently researching strategies to support Munsee language revitalization, including the connections between the Munsee language, the Thames River, and the surrounding geography and natural environment. We've also had some conversations about possibly translating the whole calendar into Lenape, but we'll see where we go. Hopefully we're able to do that next year as well. And he works for the Indigenous Education Office at the Ministry of Education. Nahau, Gitchmugach Ian for sharing the phrases today with us for Planting Moon and for facilitating, and we're really excited to learn more about Munsee Delaware and the Munsee dialect. And let's get started. Mach Tada, Miigwech.
Anishik Ali, Anishik Lori, and Anishik Marcy as well. I just wanted to do a big shout out for Anishinaabeg Nation for including the Munsee language in the calendar. I believe we're the only Munsee speaking body within the political organization. So I do appreciate that. It's very wonderful. And I know the calendars were very well received back home. So they were taken like hotcakes pretty much in my last language class. For those people online as well, the Anishinaabeg Nation, you can't see it there, but the Anishinaabeg education system also is doing a lot of great work to include Munsee language in their resources. So they've developed a learning Anishinaabemowin and Lenape phrase guide that goes with different times of year. So for those that are part of the webinar today, both organizations, Anishinaabeg Nation and Anishinaabeg Education System, are doing a lot of great work to support the Munsee language. So a huge shout out to both. Yeah, I've organized this webinar a bit to provide a bit of history about the Munsee Delaware people here in Ontario. So it's going to be a bit of a mix of language, culture, and history. And I think that, the language is the one that ties all of those together. So without further ado, I guess we'll get started. I'll introduce myself in the language and then we'll get going with the slide deck. So Wailak Nayapowni, sorry. Wow. Okay, that would have been good when I was in the morning, but Wailak Kishkwik Wamawan. Good afternoon, everyone. Nidashinzi Wabanaka. My name is Ian McCallum. Ninonjai Nalahi. I'm from up the river, Munsee Delaware Nation. Nawalutman Windup Takwa, and I follow the ways of the turtle, which is my mom's people. My mom's people are the Munsee. My dad is an English immigrant who came over after World War II. So I have a lot of different heritages in my background. Next slide, please, Ali. To provide a bit of context, because the Munsee Delaware Nation, we're a small community of 650 people total, with about 150 people that live on reserve. the major question that I get asked when I deliver, presentations at universities or even within the Indigenous Education Office is, can you provide a little bit of history about the Munsee people and when they came to Ontario? Because we're a group of people that are not well documented and well publicized, I guess. And so I'll draw a context back to the Munsee homelands, which are along the Hudson River in New York State, but also encompassing parts of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. So the area along the eastern seaboard is our traditional homelands. And the picture in the bottom right sort of gives you an idea of some of the rivers down there. I had the opportunity to paddle a river just it's in Princeton, New Jersey. So I was paddling a river with some friends of mine and got to sort of see the natural environment of where my people came from. So there are two different dialects of the what would be called the Lenape language. We've been called the Delaware Indians in the past. We've changed that to be more inclusive of the language, so we're called the Lenape. But within the Lenape, there are two different dialects of language. One which is called the Unami language, which is spoken by the Lenape people who live in Oklahoma. And then there's the Munsee dialect, which is spoken in 3 locations in Ontario at Six Nations, Munsee Delaware Nation, and at Moraviantown or Elnapawi-Lakui. Next slide, please. We are people who are closely associated with wampum and treaty as a group of people that faced, I guess, the colonists very, very early on. We had to come to grips with a lot of conflict, but also establish treaties with the newcomers. So that includes the Dutch, the Swedes, the English. We've all had to create ways in which we can make ourselves understood and work in the same environment. And wampum was one of those, and one of the most famous treaties that the Munsee people signed was with William Penn of Pennsylvania in about 1685. There's a tree that is on a college campus in Philadelphia where apparently this treaty happened. There's a lot of misunderstandings and some historical debate in terms of whether it happened under that tree. However, it was a very key piece because we thought that we were dealing with a particular government that was respecting our particular rights. And like many Indigenous groups, when you fall into treaty, you find out that that's just not the case, and that suddenly you're having to leave your homelands and have to go other places because of the encroachment of European colonists. Next slide, please. So we began the migration westward, and I guess the key piece to remember here is that rivers were a very big part of our move westward. So from our location in along the Hudson, along the eastern coast of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, we now had to use the rivers like the Delaware, the Susquehanna, the Allegheny to make our way northwest towards Lake Ontario and Lake Erie. Many conflicts happened, and of course, we often chose the wrong side to be on. That includes the King Philip's War, where a lot of our people were imprisoned in the sort of late 1600s and removed to an island off of Boston, just to make sure that they were far away from their homeland. But also more well known would be the 7 Years' War and the American Revolution. And in both cases, the way in which we supported either European nation in those or the Americans, not the Americans rather, result in us having to move further to the northwest. We did spend time, and the map kind of shows it, our proximity with the Haudenosaunee. So there's some key aspects to our culture that are very different from the Anishinaabeg way of doing things, even though we have very close ties with the Anishinaabeg, the Chippewa, the Odawa, Potawatomi. We do some things that are culturally different, and I'll get into that a little bit later. We did cross at Niagara, and we moved to the Haldimand Tract before the Six Nations people did. I think that burned a bridge with the British government in the 1780s because they wanted sort of a tidy, organized settlement of the Six Nations and the indigenous allies. We jumped the river before that and decided that we were just going to keep on going. So that sort of brought the Munsee under a different view, I believe, with the British government in terms of how our negotiations and our relationship was going to go further on. Another Lenape group crossed at Detroit, and they were members of the Moravians. So they had been connected with the Moravian Church and had moved to Ohio, and then they came into Canada about 1789 to escape sort of the pressures of living southwest of the lake. In current context, there are communities at Six Nations, Munsee, Delaware, and Moraviantown. Excuse me. Next slide. There's a big, beautiful picture of the Thames River in southwestern Ontario. You'll notice that the color is pretty brown. It doesn't change much because it flows over a clay belt. So your river is always going to be somewhat that color. But this is very typical, I think, of Munsee people in terms of how we had to adapt from living on the eastern seaboard, where we were people that would use the ocean to fish. We gained a lot of food from the Atlantic Ocean, to now having to transform ourselves into river people. And so we use the Delaware, the Susquehanna. All of those rivers have a very similar appearance in terms of they're fairly flat, they're wide, they're not necessarily the fastest moving river. So we've been able to adapt to our surroundings in order to survive and to ultimately leave our homelands. Next slide. So there's some issue in terms of when we actually came to live on the Thames River. When you dive into the world of language, oftentimes you get dragged into treaty negotiations as well, because of course history is tied to language and it's tied to culture. So part of my language work has evolved because of several different surveys that were done of the Thames River. This one was done in 1792, and I picked it because it shows the head of passable navigation. So our village, the Munsee village, is in sort of 3 different locations on the north side of the river. And in fact, there's an additional village on the south side of the river. So if you're looking at it on the webinar, our villages are on sort of the left-hand side of the river there with the little boxes, but there's an additional village actually on the other side of the river as well. Now, modern day, if you were to come to this whole part is, it's part of Chippewa of the Thames First Nation, with a very small part of it in the middle, which is our community. And then on the other side of the river is actually Oneida Nation of the Thames. So we're actually within a very small geographic area. There is actually 3 very distinct Indigenous languages, plus English and French. The key part to this map that's very interesting is the path that comes in from Moraviantown. So there's already a well-established path between the 2 villages. And on the right-hand side of the river are cornfields. And there is a vast swath of cornfields. And the geography of that area, it's a floodplain. So every year that gets flooded out, and it's very nutrient rich. So there were huge cornfields, and the missionaries down in Moraviantown wrote about how when they first came to Canada in 1790 and decided to settle at Moraviantown, the Munsee people upstream actually saved them from famine because they gave them vast stores of corn. And you can't build up vast stores of corn just in 1 year. So the argument would state that we were here long before 1792 and Patrick McNiff came through and decided to survey our community. So argument states that in modern context, the Munsee people have been on the Thames River since at least 1785. And that would fit with migration patterns from the Grand River as well. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. I should stay there if you don't mind, Ali. There's the other part. The Chippewa village is actually listed at the very top. So we like to make sure that the Chippewa people see this, right? That we had 3 big villages and they only had 1, because now the tides have changed a bit. Next slide, please, Ali. Thanks. It's all good-natured ribbon. Now, we had a very special guest in 1793 come through, at least if you're into Ontario history. Governor John Graves Simcoe came for a visit, and he was on his way down to Detroit because Detroit was still in the hands of the British at the time. And he was sort of doing an audit of all the defensive places that he was going to have to be aware of as governor. He also wanted to sort of get a bigger picture of the province that he'd inherited. And he stopped over not once, but twice, actually. So on his way down to Detroit, he stopped, and on his way back, he stopped as well. And he talks about the Delaware Castle. The Delaware Castle was built on a very high part of the land overlooking the Thames River. And he talks about how they had an enormous feast both times that he stopped. So most likely when he stopped the first time and had the huge feast, when you hit a good restaurant, you're going to come back. So he came back up the river and decided to stay again. And again, the Munsee people treated him well, and they gave him food. But part of that was also those, hey, remember that treaty? Remember we helped you in the American Revolution? We would like to secure, land here in Upper Canada, as it was called, so that we can build a community here. Next slide, please. Here is one of those such negotiated settlements, which we're still trying to look into and get a better sense from. So this belt exists within the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. It was given up by the man on the right-hand side named Jacob Dolson, who was a relative of a great friend of mine, Karen Dolson, who was my colleague in language teaching. She passed a couple of years ago. But that's her direct relative who gave this belt to an anthropologist. So it has some meaning, which we need to do some further work with to figure out exactly what that belt was supposed to be in terms of whether it was a treaty, whether it was we promised this, we need to get back into the world of understanding just exactly that oral tradition of the belt itself. So the interesting thing is with friends that I think that are on here, actually, we found that the card attached to this belt says that the belt can be used by the community anytime that they want. And it was, and I'm paraphrasing, it's not exact, but very interesting that the person who gave the belt up, Jacob Dolson, who held on to it for literally most of his life and got it from his dad, who was a War of 1812 veteran. Their only stipulation in giving this belt up, or if it was in exchange for money or whatever, was that the community could get the belt back in times where they needed to organize treaty negotiations with either the British or the Canadian government. And I found that very interesting, that the generations prior to us were thinking about us in the future, right, in terms of that this belt was going to be needed. Next slide, please. There's another picture of the Thames River. This is actually, on the left-hand side is actually Oneida Nation of the Thames. So it's got really high clay cliffs. And the best part of the Thames is that despite being in a really well-developed part of Ontario, and I say that from a standpoint that there's lots of farms, you don't assume that it's a place where you're gonna just sort of disappear off into the wilderness. You get that sense when you travel down the river, and you don't feel like you're actually surrounded by southern Ontario, where the 401 is within 15 kilometers. You're paddling on the way to Detroit, which is a massive American city. You don't get that sense, and I think that this high clay cliff that we're paddling beside sort of gives that sense where there's trees on both sides. You're on the river. You don't get that sense that if I climbed up the cliff that I'm actually in civilization, which is wonderful from a perspective of talking about history and sort of putting yourself back into the canoe of your ancestors, but also talking about the trees that you see, the geographical points along the river, and thinking about how the river was actually used by the Munsee people. So in that way, it's wonderful because it's almost like an untouched, beautiful part of the world. Next slide, please. So this is part of my research that I'm doing now, and I apologize if I've anybody who's on here, because I do talk about this a lot. So, and if I'm boring you, I'm sorry. But what I'm looking for is I'm actually looking to see the similarities between Lenape, which is New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, and Southern Ontario, because Southern Ontario has a very specific climate zone known as the Carolinian zone. There are trees, plants, animals, and insects that only occur in southwestern Ontario and don't occur in the rest of Ontario. I'm not going to find any sycamore trees in Barrie, Ontario, where I'm at now, but there are a bazillion of them along the Thames River. If I go down to Princeton, if I go down to New York, if I go to Pennsylvania, there are sycamore trees all over the place. So what I'm trying to figure out is that there's actually a rationale for why the Munsee people decided to settle on the Thames River as opposed to the Nottawasaga River where I live. Right? They didn't come further north, and I believe it's for a number of reasons, including their relationship with the Chippewa people, but also we're river people now. The plants, the trees, the food sources are all very similar to what we understand and know from our homelands. The soil, specifically the climate, if you've ever spent time down in London or St. Thomas or Windsor, the climate difference between Windsor and North Bay is incredible, right? In terms of winters and how harsh the winters are. Your summers are going to be a lot more humid, but also that may be exactly how we saw things coming from where we came from. The funny piece that I'll lend in here too when it comes to treaty negotiations is we are known by a couple of things. One, we're known as the grandfathers because apparently, if you live in the linguistic world, and I don't, the Munsee language is actually the most archaic form of the Anishinaabeg language. So it's actually thought that Ojibwe, Odawa, Potawatomi came from the Munsee language. It evolved from the Munsee language because I gather, and again, you'd have to ask linguists out there, that our language is the oldest form of that. We are also known as the overnight guests that never left, because we are people that had to leave our homelands. Both the Haudenosaunee people have called us that because we have stayed with them along the Susquehanna and when we were at Niagara Falls and on the Grand River. But also the Chippewa people on the Thames have called us the overnight guests that never left because we showed up in 1785 and we're still here in 2024. So there is also those comments that come out, especially when there's treaty negotiations, but also in terms of good-natured ribbing as well. Next slide, please. I mentioned earlier that we do some things that are a little different compared to the Anishinaabe way of doing things. We had a traditional religion, which was known as the Big House religion. So we had probably the last big house ceremony in Ontario back in the 1840s, when our community reluctantly converted to Methodism. So that's an image, a drawing from an Irish visitor to Upper Canada in 1845, 1850, named James Beavan. He drew the big house that was on Munsey. We had a mask society, so the Missing Kalikan. The mask in the top left-hand corner is a mask that came from Munsey, Delaware. But there's a lot of similarities in terms of, masked societies, the Hadui part of the Haudenosaunee. Masks are a very big part of our religion. There's a picture of the interior of the big house, and I'm just sort of going through a story by a Reverend Alvin Torrey, who was a visitor with Peter Jones in Southwestern Ontario. He came around with Peter, and he wrote about his experience going into the big house, and he was being rather rude. So the Munsey people, I think, if I read between the lines right, sort of gave him the stink eye. And he sort of didn't come back to the community, but he left a really great detail about the actual ceremony that goes on within the big house, at least from a Munsey, Delaware context. The small little doll, Nanetis, the guardian of health, is at the American Museum of Natural History. That doll came from our community, and I believe Suzanne's online, and Suzanne has sort of highlighted the fact that there's actually another one at the Woodland Cultural Center, which is very interesting. Our traditional drum is square, not round. So there's another piece. So our drum is a folded deer skin, and it is hit with sticks. So our music is much the same as the Haudenosaunee social songs. In fact, we actually gave them a lot of our songs because we couldn't hold on to them while we were busy trying to escape the Americans or the British or the French or whoever was, coming after us at the time. So one of the great things of having Oneida across the river from us is that many of their cultural knowledge keepers come across and they share those songs so that we can relearn them. And we also go counterclockwise. So we don't go clockwise like an Anishinaabe Nation does, right? So we do things a little different. We go the other way as well. Next slide, please. I thought I'd highlight this as well because we've been in Ontario for 240 some odd documented years. I had an elder come up to me and say, we've actually visited Southwestern Ontario a lot longer than that. And I haven't had a chance to actually follow up with them about that. But with the University of Western Ontario, I've been able to actually document all of the places in Southwestern Ontario that have a Munsey name that we actually had a name for. So then that's free to access. But we have 60 places between sort of Hamilton and Detroit that have a Munsey equivalent, which is kind of neat. So it sort of goes with that river research where, okay, so I wonder if, this rapids that's on the Thames actually had a Munsey name. And so I went back into files and looked around and, looked through various dictionaries to see if I could find one. And I'll share one quickly with you because I know that I'm probably burning through my time here. But Alamawang, which you see close to Lake Ontario there, means down the hill. And that is the name for Hamilton. So the Delaware at Six Nations named that place Alamawang. And that totally makes sense if you've been to Hamilton, right? Because there's Hamilton down here and you got Hamilton up top now as well. So those are a couple of, that's an interesting place name. I always find that really neat. Next slide, please. Another passion of mine is actually understanding the natural world. And I had the pleasure of walking with Glenn Jacobs, who is from Moraviantown, and he took us on a medicine walk. But unfortunately, he said, can't write anything down. So that's great. And it's not great when you're in, Western trained where you got to write stuff down. That's the only way information is important, right? And, he passed many years ago. So, but it sparked an interest in me because I've always known that the natural environment around Munsey and Southwestern Ontario was way different than, where I work now in Barrie, Ontario. And I find that the differences are so very interesting. So another project that we're doing on the community is actually identifying the trees of the Carolinian forest and applying their Munsee name to them, whether it's sort of like a talking field guide, I guess. I've become a plant and tree nerd. I can't believe this. I used to bug my parents nonstop, and now I've become one. So, and you can sort of see how this slides into, a guide for birds, a guide for animals, and all these are designed to be supportive of language learners, K through adults. So there's sort of 4 trees listed here, but we have a very long list with research. We got white cedar, sycamore, American chestnut, and flowering dogwood are on here. So we're still working on those and working on something that's interactive. So if you click the tree, you can hear the word. Next slide, please. We do have a very big series of language resources. So for a very small community, I'm surrounded by people who've helped along the way. And I mentioned Karen earlier, but I'd be remiss not to talk about my sister, Mary Jane McCallum, my cousin Julie Tucker, the support of Chief and Council, Roger Thomas. A lot of counselors have been so supportive, but also a lot of allies as well. So those allies include professors at the University of Western Ontario, and also people at Princeton and at IES and other American institutions. They've been so very helpful in terms of supporting, because I was never a language person. I learned French as a kid. I learned Munsee from people who I stayed with. I used to stay with my great-grandfather Alonzo Logan, and he used to share language all the time. But I don't have necessarily the language brain to pick things up. I've had to work really hard at it. And so it's been really wonderful to have a whole bunch of allies and people that can help, because with my colleagues passing, Karen, now it's sort of fallen on me to keep the language going, right, as the most fluent second language speaker on the community. And I've, very recently we've reached out to Moraviantown and sort of we're in the process of forming a Lenape language commission so that the 2 communities will work together to support the language needs. And I think that's so important, and that's that relationship piece that's so very important going forward. But I thought I'd highlight these 3 texts, so those on the line, and for those at Anishinaabe Nation can keep their ears open. We do have an upcoming bilingual text in Munsee and in English, which is known as Winter's, it's The First Kiss of Winter. I get this title wrong every time. It is a 12-page community story, so 12 pages in English, community story from the Nicholas family, and they asked me to translate it. So it is fully illustrated by a community member, and it will be shared in the fall of this year. It's a wonderful story, and it talks about how did winter come to be, but from a Munsee perspective. Another piece that's coming up in the fall of 2024 is a veteran that's very important to our community, and Arnold Logan. He is my great uncle. He fought in World War I, and he signed up essentially at the same time as Francis Pegamagabo. So he was one of the very first Indigenous soldiers to fight for Canada in World War I. He has a very interesting story, and it's a non-fiction fiction text that talks about his life. There is a current text available for those that are interested in some future community resource about Munsee learning. It also delves into the world of Chippewa a bit, and that's Nindalok, which was written by my sister Mary Jane, and it talks about boys and girls work at Mount Elgin. Key here is that artists in the communities were accessed as part of the reconciliation, but also part of the work forward. So working with the history department at Chippewa and looking at Munsee, they've created this text, which is a wonderful resource. It was designed for use in Ontario schools, grades 7, 8, and 9, because that's sort of the historical time period that they work on. And it's full of language, but it is written in English. Next slide. I do get asked, do we have any Muncie resources? And I'm always mindful that I have boxes of them behind me, but I'm not on community right now, and we don't have a dedicated spot in our community. So that's one of our big, I don't know, is it a Christmas ask? Is it a, I don't know, a May long weekend ask? We're looking to see if we can't get our own spot where we can have our own materials and learning center. We do have other community stories that have been illustrated and told. So a 1930s article about the death of Tecumseh, which is sort of like the, it's like the eighth wonder of the world, right? Where were Franklin's ships, the pyramids of Giza, and where is Tecumseh buried? So that was it's a big Southwestern Ontario story. An interview done by my great uncle, Jacob Logan. We turned it from English into Muncie because he was a Muncie speaker. So we actually reversed the process where we took something that he said in English, and now we took it back into the Muncie language. So it's a repatriation of language. We're taking that back and we're getting the story into the language original. So we have that story, and I think there's two others as well, talking about the little people, and I'm going to forget the other one. But we have quite a wonderful selection of texts for learners. Next slide. And there's some of the gangs. So we do host community resource weekends, workshops, where we work with language, but we do things while we learn language. So there's a split ash basket making with Carol Ann Miracle from Tyendinaga. She's been down a couple of times. So we learn vocabulary, simple sentences, sort of building up, the language capacity of community members, but we also do something interesting. We do Planting Moon. So we're in Planting Moon right now, and soon the strawberry will be out. So lots of learning resources in terms of those to be shared, both at our daycare and at the elementary school where our kids go, but also those workshops on the weekends. We do maple syrup. So part of that is also that land-based learning, doing things the old way, but learning the process and then documenting that in the language as well, creating videos and scripts. And I just wonder where I find the time. Thank heavens I got people who help me. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the end of the culture and history piece. And I still got time. Wow, I was worried. So I will share the words that are part of the May calendar. These many people recognize these ones. We have some interesting things. We have sort of a similar vowel pattern to the Ojibwe. We do have the letter X, which is a sound. So if you got imagine that you're, I don't know, you're a cat and you got a fur ball, and you're like, so there's like a sound if you come across the letter X. So I don't recall whether there's any in this list. So if you do hear me cough, I'm not in any distress. It's just me speaking the wonderful Muncie language. And again, I'm a second language learner. I definitely heard the language from both my great grandfather and my grandmother when I was a kid. There were numerous people that used to come across over to the house. Most of them were Dolsons because we lived next to each other. So they would come over and talk to my great grandfather, and there'd be people talking Muncie all the time. The only time that English really dominated when I was very young was when Bonanza came on, and everybody liked Bonanza. You have to be a certain age to know what Bonanza is. But definitely I could hear the language in the 70s. With the passing of those people that were born in the 1800s, that language failed to live on. So in 1990, I think when Bill Dolson passed, Karen's grandfather, that was the end of the language on the community. And I made the decision in about 1996 to go back and learn the language. I had to go back to Moraviantown to learn it. I made that decision in a bar in Hamilton. So good decisions do come when you're in a bar sometimes. But the kind people at Moraviantown, Diane Snake, sort of prompted my learning journey back again with the language. So I do encourage anybody who's in the webinar, it's never too late. I was in my 20s when I learned. I've been learning ever since. I won't be ever fluent, but I'm definitely hooked on language learning. So I'll go through the words now without further ado.
A question before you
Quinganawa.
get going.
Oh yeah, Ollie, go ahead.
Sorry. I know, sorry about that. I was trying to jump in there before you actually got things rolling. We do have a question here in the chat. Paul is wondering if there is a Munsee name for the Thames River. And then following it up with, is it the same as Anishinaabemowin? So let's start with that one. Do you have a name?
Well, I don't know if I want to answer Paul or not. I know Paul. Just kidding, Paul. I'll answer. So I believe that there's a Chippewa word for the Thames River, which is the Ant River. When I was a kid, they used to call it a Schoonasippi. A Schoonasippi, I'm remiss to know whether that's proper Ojibwe or not, but I believe that's a name that I heard oftentimes. I believe that the river's name is Asiskasipo, which I think probably means exactly the same thing, muddy river. Now that name actually transcends not just the Thames. So it actually refers to a lot of other rivers that are muddy. So I don't know whether the Thames had its own specific name. I haven't found it yet, but Asiskasipo definitely follows the pattern of a Schoonasippi, which is I believe the Ojibwe word. So yeah.
Miigwech.
Huh? Was there another question, Ali, or do you want me to go when we start speaking?
That was it. That was it.
Okay,
That was
good.
the one.
Okay. All right. So I'll get.
Oh, look at now I'm flashing ahead for everybody. All right, we're back on the page we should be.
Okay. So the first word's interesting because I had my hand slapped when I was a young 20-year-old, 25-year-old. Quinganawa, it is good to see you. You can only say that if you see someone. So right now I can only say that to Lori and Ali because I can see them. I actually used that term on the phone with Diane Snake, and Diane said, you can't use that because I can't see you. And that's the old style phone, right? Not our new style of phone where you can have a video chat call. So I had my hand slapped with that one, but it was very good learning for me, right? Because, you find those very interesting language learning pieces, right? Where I argue English and French, you don't do that, right? There's words you will say in certain contexts in Indigenous worlds, in Munsee worlds, some words you just can't use. Kolamalsi, how are you feeling? Ni nolamalsi, I feel okay or I feel good. Ni nonjai nalahi, so I am from up the river, the best place to be. You don't want to be downriver. Anyways, next slide. Lapich Canal, see you again. Again, I can't use that for most of everyone here on the call because I can only see Lori and Ali. And I don't want to say see you again yet because I've still got some words to say. Yokwa mitso, let's eat. I just got to move there we go. Hanga a hakuchimo, can you help me? And that was a translation that helps out the daycare. I work with the Munsee Delaware Daycare, which is an interesting place because it actually supports all three languages because we've all married into the different communities. So they've created a plurilingual environment where Munsee language is learned, Oneida is learned, and Chippewa is learned. It's really quite interesting. Lachoelam, there it is. Lachoelam, be careful. Another good one for daycare. Ha alami quachimum, let's go outside. Next slide. Quack talok, what are you doing? The Salonda, the hot day. It was a hot day today. I was coming from Curve Lake back to Barrie, and it was 23 degrees. It was nice. I should have stayed in Curve because the water was really beautiful. Wingalundum Kukana Kishqueak. And that's coming up this weekend. So happy Mother's Day to the mothers who are on the line and to all the mothers out there. So that's a piece where we've had to build up because of course that's a sort of a more modern context term. So we've had to adjust how we use the language to create things to support a modern context.
Ian, can you
Oh yeah,
explain in that one, like one of those is day, right? I'm guessing that the last word, kishkwik, means day.
that's right. Yeah, cooking is mother, Ishkwik is day, and then Wingalundum is happy or joyful. So it's happy, joyful Mother Day. Yep. 13. Kwaka na konja lineman. Why did you do that? I've never used that, but it would be helpful in a daycare. Or me teaching elementary school. Why did you do that? Holy. Next slide. That's a popular one. Nimach Gish. I'm finished. Owen Hawa. Who is this? Juan Hanin Jos. This is my friend. Ninda Kinzi. I'm reading. No Lakaman. I write something down. I'm gonna have to use Karen's way of doing things. I may have to go backwards on some of these. They're pretty big. Hiluna, Kumushalana, Nato Paliana. We remember the warriors. So that was a piece that was done for the last post. They asked for translations to include the Munsee language in a national group of languages. So that one we had to work up as well. Nimawi Shkolo, I go to school. Ni Nimchahma, I play lacrosse. And then Match Gisha Pona, I'm finished speaking. I guess we should probably put that one at the end because then nobody's going to hear 23.
I was noticing your looks like a little bit of Lenape or Munsee English. Sometimes we talk about OG English in there with your
Yes.
skolu. Looks like yeah.
Yes. Yep. It's a little bit of an accent. Lakama Willet, Watakani Kishkwik Wak Peacock. So that's another buildup. The weather is good, warm days and cold nights. I use that in a resource to support planting moon. And it was pre-pandemic when we did this. And we had, I think in the neighborhoods of 50 people that came out. We had sort of a seed exchange. So we had corn and corn beans from Mohawk Seed Keepers, Terry Lynn Brandt at Six Nations. And she came up and she sort of taught us all about the seeds and the traditional ways of planting and how you group the plants. And so we had 50 people out planting their seed starter kits and things like that. And somebody remarked, he said, you know what? It's probably the first time that we've used planting words and sentences on the land in probably 50 years, right? In terms of actually actively using language while we're doing something that we would have always done. We're very much an agricultural people. So I thought that was very cool. Tahak Ta, where are you going? Ninda Kopi Elm. I am going to the bush. Ki Shui Aki Watakana. The ground is warm. It is warm out. Pretty soon the cicadas will be out, I guess. It's supposed to be a double batch. Oh, I gotta move my thing here again. Okay, I'm gonna disappear for a second. Here we go. Yokwaha ha Pamashawila. Let's go swimming. Kilona Palo Kitasawi Nak Pishkup. We work the soil with a shovel. Shkup actually works as both a shovel and as a playing card, I believe. I'd have to look that back up. It sort of crossed my memory that you can use that word for both. Kilona Ta Kihana Wakanimo. We plant seed. And so that the seed on that part is pluralized. So you're planting not just one seed, but you're actually planting a whole bunch. And you can tell that by Wakanimo. Wakanim means one seed, but Wakanimo means a whole bunch. Nina Tataman Makakwo, when I pick pumpkins. Mescanitaha is brave. And then I don't know if there's another one. Maybe. Is there another page? I guess there's 31 days. Oh no, there is more. All right. Good. And a wiki nda nin nalakwakwan wanipakwo. When I go home, I rake leaves. And hopefully I don't have any leaves to rake out there right now. I think the winds that we've had have really blown them away. So that'd be good. That's a good fall one. Wanipakwo, Anji Towo, Takalachen. Leaves change bright colors. So these are good ones for the fall if you refer back in your calendar to that point. Ninaman, okay, yeah. Ninaman Chipayak, Kimokwawak Wag Shokalashal. I see ghosts, witches, and candy. So if you have people that knock on your door for Halloween, you can use some Munsee language on them. So Chipayak is ghosts. Kimokwawak as witches, and Wak Shokalashal is candy.
It's interesting when I listen to you because sometimes I can hear a little bit of Anishinaabe, right?
Yeah.
You know, so in that first one with the Chipayak, right? It reminds me a little bit of the Chipai. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah,
But I don't know
definitely.
about that next one. I thought I heard a little bit of a quay in there.
Well, that's exactly. So Kimokwawak, it's actually that kwe that you hear refers to gender. So it's a female, which I believe in this case. So, and I don't know enough about sort of Munsee spirituality when it comes to those things to, provide a good opinion. Kikatawito Huata Kopang. Do you know if the snow is deep in the forest? That one's a good one for doing maple syrup because you don't really want to go up to your waist when you're tapping the trees. Yo, boots all yo. These boots okay? I certainly hope so. When you're going tapping or when you're going down the river to go fishing. Shokalambi, Chila, Yon Kwai Kishkwik. Is the sap running today? Shokalambi can also be used because it's basically sugar water. That's the translation. It was a word that my kids understood very young because they really like sugar water, like fruit juice. So we'd sing a song about Shokalambi. I'm not going to sing, but we did sing a song. We also sang a song about pears. These funny words when you're building things in the language. I'm just a terrible singer. Next slide.
I'll be like, you'll like this one because that's it.
Oh,
Me with
Timagwach, Huatanishik, Huatanishik, Anishinaabeg Nation. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time.
Yeah, Marcy posted in the chat there for you. Anushik Ian. Anushik Ian. Of course, we're here also to say Gishmibashi and thank you very much. So much to learn, and you did a great job, sharing about the history and the migration and the various matters that factored into the relocation and the development of relationships with nations like the Anishinaabe Nation and the Chippewa, of course, as well as the Oneida. So we got a lot of thank yous in here, some Bama peas. There's another one from Susan. She's saying Nushik and also saying that Shukup is spade or the card suit of spades. So there you go. That's what it is. And of course, go ahead.
Oh, I said I was going to do a small push for the community. Our powwow is on the long weekend at the end of June. If you are very interested in more Muncie language resources, history, and culture, we do have a massive by our standards. We have a big double tent of lots of resources and stuff that we're finding out about the community. So I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a Muncie shill here taking over the webinar, so I apologize.
No, we're
Thank
happy
you.
to learn and we're happy to know about community events, and hopefully that one made it into the powwow guide, which is floating around out there, right,
Yes.
Marcy? I think she can drop the link in there to this year's powwow guide. We're also saying, if you'd like to speak, raise your hand, and we'll unmute you if anybody wants to actually say anything to Ian other than in the chat there. We are working on an early June date for our next webinar with Misquanquad Rice. I think I see a hand is up there, so stay posted for that in our socials. Paul's got his hand raised, so I'm gonna, okay, there, Marcy's let that go through, so we'll let Paul go ahead. Your hand is up. Feel free to unmute.
Anishik, Ian. Good to see you. Paul from
Nice to-
upstate New York.
Nice to hear you, Paul. I hope all is well. I hope you guys have good weather down there.
Yeah, we're gonna have a power.
Nice.
Excellent.
Getting to be that time of year.
Mhm.
Oh, wow. So again, to everybody, we'd like to say get to if you'd like more information about the Anishinaabe department here at the Anishinaabe Nation, you can reach out to myself, Ali Darnay, or you can reach out to Learn McLeod Shop Music, and you have our emails there. Thanks for taking the time to, share in the Muncie dialect and to join us here today. And we're always happy to share the language and support the language. So if you've got any events coming up that you want to share out with us, or if you'd like to contribute to next year's Anishinaabe Nation Kizizo Mizinigan, please let us know. Really looking forward to getting started on next year's. And we've got two hands. I see, Paul, you still have your hand up. So if you want to say anything, Paul went off mute there. So maybe Paul's done. Yeah, still hanging around. And then we've got John Nicholas. Go ahead, John.
Kolomalsi, John. Must take a little while to get the message to the Netherlands. John is John's the author of A Kiss of the Winter's First Kiss. So I don't know if he's still on the line, but he is the creator of that story.
John
Hello,
Nicholas.
Ian.
John
There
Nicholas.
he
Hey,
is.
John. Kolomalsi, John.
Good to see you.
Yeah.
And
good to see
thank
as
you
well.
for the lessons.
Yeah, definitely. We'll be in touch too, because the story's coming out with your guidance anyway, hopefully in the fall.
Oh, wonderful. I'm
Yeah.
glad. I can't wait to see it.
Yes, I think you'll be pretty happy. Hope all's well in the Netherlands.
It is. It is. It's a little bit late here in the evening.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we have any other hands up, now's your chance. In the meantime, I'll share a fun fact with Ian that once upon a time, your sister and I went to the same school. McMaster University, we crossed paths.
There we go.
So you'll have to tell her, Ali Darnay says, Anique.
We'll do that. It's a small world, right?
It is.
I love it. I'll text her right now.